All right. So I think Huiming, you and I met in 2019 at a conference, right? And that was, I think, the last in-person conference I ran and was, participating at. And looking back at how, the pandemic has changed the way we're doing work, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, how has the way you and your team work changed? What were some of the, surprising challenges? What were the solutions that you found that work well? And some of the surprising, I guess, the bonuses of working remote and in the in the current world. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, great to see you again. I wish that we are side by side. I'm not, in fact, you're side by side in my little room, but I'm side by side with you. So, and that's one of the, I guess, amazing things you can actually get. Even though not physically closer, but a lot closer in some ways to get to know the people you're working with, right? You get to see what they have in the background, maybe crazy kids who are jumping in. In fact, mine may get in any time. So it's a different way of connecting with the people. And I think initially people may shy from sharing the screens and sharing the background because at the beginning we just if you everyone still remember, we suddenly go into this remote working stage that our home is not set up actually to
Right.
be that way.
It's so unprofessional, yeah.
So I think we had to. I have to share background or make sure that it's not it's comfortable or it's comfortable actually for you not to share. So there are a lot of adjustments that's happened. I'll tell you, definitely one of the good things coming out of it is making the distance equal. So in a way that we are very, distributed companies, we're a distributed team, that we have satellite teams in Austin, Dallas, and Bay Area and different places people work remotely. Sometimes they will feel they are not as connected because in the conference room we sit so tightly with each other and talking, and those are kind of a natural habit that when you are I guess sitting in a room with someone or in a group of people with someone, and sometimes we have offsites that people may not be able to make it. And scheduling bigger offsites is always a hassle. So this actually brings everyone with the equal distance and is very good to connect with the people as everyone wants to do that. We have the Voice of Associates review to understand what is the improvements areas every year. The year up until before, communication with the different sites is always being number one in terms of how do we address and connect the teams and letting the team feeling left alone, and that just gone immediately from all the effort that we're making. Along with many other things, I would say probably one other thing is the work-life balance, right? I thoroughly enjoyed the time saved, not needing to commute. And I think a lot of people do have that repurposed to many other things. It could be spending time with the families. It could be, improvements for yourselves and getting healthier and all of that. I don't think we'll go back ever. There's a ceiling point, we get the benefits of that, and we want to continue those whatever works for everyone's schedule in a better way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the old normal is kind of gone, and everyone's kind of like adapting to this new way of working. And I guess having led like open source decentralized teams, one of the things we found that we have to kind of watch out for is checking up on team members, right? Open source being kind of like decentralized by nature. Sometimes people will show up for a few weeks and not show up. But then now, as team leads, it's like a good time to check up on people and be like, "Hey, is everything okay? Is your folks doing okay? Is there anything we can help with?" So yeah, that's definitely like good things to keep in mind. And some of the changes I've noticed, even going from full remote before to full remote now. But yeah, so I want to kind of like change the topic a little bit. This is about machine learning leadership. I'm curious to hear your kind of thoughts on major turning points and decisions that led you to become a ML leader and led you to kind of have a very productive and illustrious career. And if you have any advice to give to your younger self or resources you would recommend to people looking to become leaders in machine learning and AI.
Sorry, Maddie, and as you can tell that I got a little guest here. So if you could just repeat the last 5 seconds of your question, that'd be great. I'm focusing on making sure he doesn't see the password, and I'm also unlocking the iPad for him.
Yeah. How about one question at a time, right? So I'm curious to hear like your kind of major decisions and turning points in your career that led you to become an ML leader, and I'll ask the follow-up questions.
Sure. I think my I call it soul searching journey or career path is a series of little accidents. I shared it with another podcast that I did. So apologize if you have actually listened to the podcast. It's a little bit accidents that I started. My academic background is database and data management, is working with data, real-time data. But only the last year of my PhD program that I finished all the but proposal, like thesis, everything. I took a class of data mining from Professor Christos Falosos. If you ever actually know him, he's a great guy and very inspirational and just a very cheerful person. Got me so interested in data mining and just fascinated by what are some of the insights and patterns and problems that we can solve using machine learning and data mining. So as I ventured into my first job in IBM research, actually I didn't do anything about, just probably like anyone else, is what I learned in my PhD thesis. It's all about actually solving problems. I joined the service department, is solving problems a lot of times using machine learning and data mining skills, but also optimization. And there's many different things that we are solving in terms of different business problems because of the service department that I'm in. And it took a few years. I realized that I really wanted to solve the problem end to end, and where in the research facility, usually you get to solve very interesting problem, a variety set of problems, but not really to the end of delivering that projects and seeing what is the feedback that you get from the algorithms, whether it's success or fail. And many times it could be actually learning from the few failures, and then you improve it. And then you see, actually, this would not work in the first time, it will work in the third and probably 10th times. So I had changed quite a few directions, but none of these, I would say, are major changes. Like I will go back to say, without that, I think there's a certain path maybe everyone takes, but there's always learnings in each of the decisions you've made that kind of build the person you are right now. And I appreciate all the experiences that I had. I always had the passion of seeing the results end to end. And I always had the passion of having not necessarily bigger impacts, but impacting more people. So consumer facing problem solving, I think I'm still just as passionate as day one joining Home Depot. If you look at the scale of the problem that we're solving, hundreds of millions of customers, if you make the experience better for them, maybe the reflection is 1 basis point, 2 basis point of conversion, but that gonna impacts hundreds of millions of people, and for business wise, it's hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's a very fulfilling, when we get there. And I constantly remind myself and my team that this is for not only the business impact, we are making people's homes better and helping them to solve their home problems better, and she'll all feel very, very good about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some commonalities between like my decisions to somehow accidentally end up in ML leadership. One's that wanting to help more people and create more impact with data, and another one is wanting to see things like going from end-to-end research to production, right? And we'll talk about research to prod a little bit later. I'm actually curious if you have any advice to give to your younger self, and if you have any advice or resources to point to for people who are kind of considering becoming a AI leader.
Sure. I mean, I can give many advice to myself, but I'll pick one.
Yes.
I'll pick one, probably just say, be less anxious, embrace all the experiences that you have. I think as a probably every young person in a great way, because I think our emotion drives us, and that gives us really the force to tackle something, even though you may be crying or screaming, but that gives you energy. I think I would love that energy minus the whatever the anxiety at the moment, to just tell my younger self, embrace whatever that you're given, whether that's extreme happiness or extreme sadness or whatever that is. It's all going to be adding, wisdom to yourself. So embrace all of that, even though at some point it was very painful experience. But it's going to be great for you. So I had my second job after IBM was in the startup's distillery in working on a lot of production code. That was my first most intensive software engineering job. And I still go back to really appreciate that experience, to being hands-on, building algorithms, processing data, deployment, and all of that work. It's a startup company, so you end up actually doing a lot of things. There's no specific functions that you do very deep. You have to do across the function a lot of different things. So that was a really good experience in sitting myself in many people's shoes. And I think even today, when we are data science function, when we are collaborating with engineering teams, that gives us a lot of insights of what it's actually mean, to connect the points with the engineering team and making sure our projects are successful. So, of course, back then I didn't know that. It was like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of strong feelings in different challenges that I've faced, and I'll tell myself, don't worry, just embrace it.
Yeah, that resonates very much with me as well. I think my advice to my younger self is worry less and code more. So that's pretty much what you said as well. I see there's a question about opportunities for entry if there's no formal machine learning background. And do you recommend going through a traditional path, getting a master's or doctorate? And I'm happy to add some pointers to this because I also don't have a traditional background, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Huiming.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, I think I just shared that you can see myself doesn't have traditional background training as well, even though I think I'm probably closer to comparing to, if you call it a physics PhD, but sometimes we have actually very talented data scientists in our team. In their second year and third year, they started to use machine learning to solve whether it's biology problems they're solving or physical problems, physics problem they're solving. I haven't actually done that until my fifth, year of my PhD. So I think we all gonna start somewhere, and the starting point could be now. It could be any point of your experience, and it really doesn't need to be traditional, formal training. I'll tell you, there's one senior manager who's super successful in our team, who has a master's degree. But I think you gotta appreciate the experience that you have with one potentially deep technical knowledge, right? And that could be picked up in your. I think it's easier relatively in an academic setting, right? So you're basically with a little noise and focusing on very good training, mathematical training, to solve a certain problem. But if you do have areas of experience in cross-functional, right, you may come from a psychology background or social study, that gives you a perspective actually to connect with people, solve certain type of problems. It could be analyzing user experience, and it could be also coming from computational background, computer science, like myself or many of the people existing, but not necessarily focusing on machine learning. But then in a way that you connect really well with software and deployment, maybe architecture, different architecture of the deep learning algorithm. So leverage your strength of your background, and then from there, there's many tools and materials. I think you asked me earlier, what are some of the resources that I can recommend? In fact, one of the recommendation is not a specific material. My recommendation will be diversify. So it seems a little bit contradictory, but for data science, to a lot of people, it's a very deep technical area. You need to focus in this, but I think a lot of times diversification will help you to connect the dots. It's not only the technical problem that we're solving, right? So we have to actually bring people along in terms of solving those problems. And specifically, I share how I continue to learn, because it's not really just you get a degree, right? You basically graduate from the learning experiences. This is a very fast-moving area, and there's constantly new things that's coming out. The technology, algorithms, and actually framework or software or open source. A lot of the new things that's coming out of the industry. I think diversification helps me to learn from podcasts, to learn from journals like Harvard Business Review, to learn from books, and these books may not be AI books at all. In a way, it really can help you to connect the dots, because that's really, I think, the number one feature for any leader, whether it's a machine learning leader or not. So I just read the book of the Ride of a Lifetime by Robert Iger, who's the CEO of Walt Disney for 15 years, and there's a lot of learnings that he was sharing. I think from connecting all these dots, it will help us to learn. And at least many of you are data scientists who understand that this will help remove the bias, right? So we do want to train ourselves not with one set of data or one type of data. We need to train ourselves with all kinds of data that will help really mimic the real world. That way we can solve a lot more problems, and probably understand and learn these from people who has already solved the problem before, to shorten the learning path.
Absolutely. And I think, one thing I would echo is that in the real world, if you're working on ML, not just for research, but for products, getting a good model is like only less than 20% of the success, right? Because there's typically multiple stakeholders involved. They want different things. They have different risk tolerances. And, getting everything all the way to production requires like a multifunctional team and multiple talents and multiple backgrounds. But this question is actually like very close to my heart, because I'm someone that learned how to program by myself, and eventually got into machine learning just by kind of self-studying. So if one data point is enough, I would say, based on my experiences, definitely you can get into the field without a formal education. I've seen kind of the field become better and better about these educational requirements, right? But I do admit it is definitely easier and probably a better learning experience if you do decide to pursue one of these formal options. And if I were to recommend some, resources or a happy path to get into machine learning, if you don't want to, pursue a advanced degree, so I would highly recommend being a little more intentional about what area of machine learning you want to specialize in, because machine learning is a very big field, and having a little bit of focus helps guide your progress. And part two is immediately start working on projects. So pick a data set or algorithm you're interested in learning, and just build it however you want. I think if you're learning by yourself, it's very sometimes difficult to keep out the motivation, and there's too many resources out there to follow, and sometimes it gets like fairly confusing as a beginner. So if you pick something you care about, maybe based on your background so far in life, and you pick a data set and you pick some questions you want to answer, and you let that curiosity drive you, you're more likely to have success, enjoy the process, and get to where you want to get to faster, right? So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, as a leader in like a large corporation, what is kind of your priorities as a leader, right? Something I found as an open source leader is that my number one priority, the thing that makes the most sense for me to do, is actually to build other leaders and rapidly level up the competencies technically, and also, like management wise for my team. Because for every leader I create, that's a person that's going to be capable of like working with another 5 people or 5 beginners, and vice versa. So I'm curious to hear, like, from your perspective, what are the most important things to you? What are your kind of your key success criterias for being a leader in machine learning for a big company?
Yeah, Maddie, I think it's a question. I don't want it to sound like cheesy, but it's actually not so much different from the success criteria for the team is not so much different from the success criteria for every individual in the team, right? So if you really add that up, the success for the team should be every team member's success. And then it's vice versa. I don't think there's going to be an equation, everyone is successful and the team is not. So striving for everyone's success is essentially how we cascade it. This is what we want to drive, and this is everyone's responsibility. Reaching that, we're going to get there. And we have this core Home Depot value is, the business is going to be great if you take care of your customer. And basically, we have associates taking care of the customer. So if you take care of associates, everything else will be taken care of by yourself. What that means specifically is, if you look at what is really mean for the success of our individual, and I talk about myself, when I was, whether it's a leader within Home Depot or it's an individual contributor somewhere else, I think number one thing, I want to feel my work is worthwhile, right? I'm passionate and making an impact. And what that impact means could be, I make these improvements of this recommendation algorithm better, and that drives for the business $5 million and incremental. It could mean 2 basis point improvement conversion, improvements on conversion, but that just means that we removed friction for our customer, right? For that engagement, maybe 10 million customers, but that, oh my goodness, I made 10 millions of customers. When they engage with this module, they converted better. So those are the individual setups that we have to motivate our teams to make the job responsible, clear. And everything else is, like you said, it could be getting their career path is also part of making them successful, right? Understanding, do they want it to be more technical as an individual contributor, upper in the personal, the individual contributor path, or the letter about the people management and how do we provide development opportunity for them and a resource for them to continue to be successful. Ultimately, you don't want the disruption of anyone looking for a different, career opportunity. This position is open. There's always the pipeline discussions. There's always career path discussions, and there's always, however you meet what excites people as a data scientist, as an analytical leader, to make them successful. And I would think everything else is taken care of them by themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think alignment is super important. I mean, leading open source is a little bit different because frequently there isn't a paycheck. So people are purely there because they're interested and they're passionate. And people are typically interested and passionate for different reasons. Some people just find the ML technique super interesting, and others are maybe having a harder time trying to break into the industry. So they're trying to prove themselves by working on open source projects. And I think one thing you said that I also do that I have found to work well is having a conversation with each team member saying, hey, this is kind of what we're trying to get to. Which parts do you see yourself wanting to help with? Are there things that you're trying to grow and get out of this, working experience? And that is all just so I have, the right ideas in mind to put people on the projects that they're going to learn from and enjoy doing. And this is how you end up keeping, team members for the long run, because open source is very kind of decentralized and membership change all the time. So that totally makes sense. And that's a really good tip. So one thing, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just thought that you made a really good comment. I probably not as familiar with the open source community, but I think one thing is common is people's needs are pretty diverse, right? So what excites me may not be exactly, we all get excited sometimes, with the technicality of the problem, right? A lot of the scientists would do, but there could be also the differentiation of people value patents more than publications, or it could be just how much I can actually be contributing as a committer to certain open source libraries and all of those different things. I think the key point is to align these, I used to call it 2 vectors, right? So you have one vector, which is actually what as a leader see to make this team successful. That could be resource, that could be alignments, that could be getting things done, making impact, and align that with a personal goal. And this basically it becomes the smaller, basically the angle is, the faster overall that we can move. So at some point, if we really align these, we can go a lot faster in terms of the speed and meeting everyone's need and also eventually making the team successful, because sometimes they may not realize that we wanted to really sponsor patent and publication and being in the conference and committing to the code, the library you wanted to do, and all of that things that excites you. But we also wanted to get the resource to enable us, to allow us the freedom to do it. Right. So those are the alignments that we constantly need to have, that communication and getting those two vectors as close as possible to move fast.
Yeah, I mean, a team is like a boat, and it goes a lot faster if we all row in the same direction. So that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So this is more of like a personal question, and I think many people who transition from like deep technical expertise, individual contributor to leading a team will experience this tension, and that is the tension between being a good team lead and then supporting your team versus like following your curiosities and digging into all the new state of art algorithms and new papers and trying new things and new frameworks, right? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how to balance this tension. And
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty obvious when you have a directional change of starting from a IC role to getting more leadership role, and there's a skill set difference. You start to realize that I need to do certain things more than others, and it could be speaking to any type of role change. Ultimately, I think the number one person we need to convince is ourselves. What is most important to you? And if that most important to you is getting more things requires as a leader done, then you have to first convince yourself, I need to spend more time talking with stakeholders. I need to spend more time marketing data science projects rather than doing it myself. Or I need to spend more time pitching for idea to get the funding of these projects, whatever that is, or spending more time resolving conflicts and clarifying responsibility, whatever that is. This may not be as, as something that you wanted to. Right, exactly. But it's important, right? So I think the first one you need to convince is yourself in spending more time there instead, spending less time here. So I don't believe there's I have no time to do this. You have all the time. You just need to allocate them based on your priorities. So once you convince yourself, then you can convince anyone you need to convince. So don't feel like you don't have the permission to do it, right? The permission is actually, yourself first, and then you convince basically whoever that is you think you need to get alignments. It could be your boss. By the way, it could be I need to spend more technical time on technical work. Then I need to convince my boss that I will not attend that meeting, because I think this will actually get all of us more successful in me going to the conference, right? To get more educated, or me going to this training program to get more hands-on instead of some other things. So ultimately, I think we all are decision makers, right? We can make that decision and trade-off and prioritization. First, convince yourself, and then the rest of the people, bring them along so that they understand why this is the best for everyone.
That makes a lot of sense. I think clarifying, priorities is always a little bit tricky, but that's where you start. And I think like two approaches I've personally been trying that seems to work is one, leveling up your team so you can hand more things off. And part two is like really checking your own ego, right? As leaders, like we need to delegate and really like trust the experts on our team. Like I don't need to be the most expert person in every single, subset of ML that I'm working on, because that's no longer possible. And it's really great to build up experts on the team for both like managerial things and also technical expertise, so you can go to that person and trust them when you need to move together as a team and make decisions. So those are still things I'm struggling with and working on, and really helpful to hear your perspective. Awesome.
Maddie, I love these interactions that we had, and I want to just add one more thing based on also your very helpful specific tips to the audience. I think as a mature organization, like we're definitely moving towards that path. We do have IC roles at the same level with the managerial position. So for example, we have principal data scientist who's equal as a senior manager position. As an individual, if I'm a senior manager in that team, I actually have this counterpart of the principal data scientist who can trust and rely on or learn from whatever particular skill set. That could be the natural language processing that this person is specialized in. So having that, whether it's delegation or trust your counterparts of this technical person, if you're a manager, or the other way around, right? So you don't need to be worried about managerial positions and responsibilities if you are really this principal position. Having that type of organization that we're creating, I think it's really helpful for both talents.
Absolutely. I mean, even on a very like research heavy team, which is kind of my situation, like I still don't need to read every paper in a field. And then if someone else has read it and they're able to like provide a summary for the team and guide us through, our decision making, that's like that's really great. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. So there's kind of like an audience question that I'll get to, but first I'd like to ask a question about imposter syndrome, right? And for those of us who are maybe not familiar with this term, I guarantee you probably experienced it no matter who you are. And that is the, sinking feeling that you feel like you're a fake and everyone's going to see through you and you're actually a very competent person, but you just don't feel competent, right? And I'm curious, when was the last time you either noticed this in yourself as a leader or even noticed maybe this is happening for one of your team members? And how did you go about, resolving and dealing with, these things that happen?
It's not for a moment, and I think I probably would notice that every moment,
all the time.
all the time. So I'll tell you, after I recorded the podcast, I don't want to listen to my voice, and I hated a lot of things that I do. So lack of confidence.
Okay, you sound great right now.
Thank you. So I think for generally a lot of women, or most, is from the researchers, it will be less confident than men, right? So you probably heard this, like for men to take on a job, they only need this much of, I wouldn't call the actual numbers, this much of confidence. For women need to have this much of confidence to take on that job. And personally, I'm a perfectionist, perfectionist. So in a way that I really wanted to get things done well, and I would spend a lot of time on getting, whether it's the precision when I work on technical projects or getting the slides or writing the paper. I tend to work till the last minute of submission back in the days. There's a thing about this that I think it was kind of built in me and many others. I would say appreciate it as a gift, because you can actually build really good credibility with this kind of habit. And once you have it, it's actually, once people appreciate that, and once they understand how you function, and there's a good amount of trust that you can build. So don't be afraid if you have this syndrome, embrace it and enjoy it. But for those of you who's feeling uncomfortable, I do, and I would tell myself to fake it sometimes until I make it, right? And you will hear probably this saying before that you'll be the best person actually know the things that you do always on that table, right? Because nobody else knows this better than you. It could be one subject, it could be machine learning, it could be search, it could be visual, the computer vision, whatever the problem that you're focusing on, nobody knows better than you. And sometimes even when you don't believe it, you can still fake it and people will believe it. They only see from the outside until you get the time to really grow into that image that you want it to become. But ultimately, I still believe that this is a gift. If whatever that you feel like you're not good enough, that's an internal drive for you to get better. And you may have a really high bar. We all do, and a lot of our women have that high bar to get there. It's a gift.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the most recent time this happened to me as leader was I had to yell on my team a little bit to say, hey, like our velocity is decreasing, let's pick it up, like all of that. And then there was a moment where like, who am I to be yelling at my team? They're volunteers and they're working on this like by themselves out of their own time. And what if they all decide to leave, right? And then at that moment I had to tell myself just like this is based on data, what you need to do. And if you do lose your team, then you just have to go and build a new one to work on this open source library. Turns out everyone was totally like cool with that. They appreciated feedback, and we actually got the whole team back on track with new velocity. So in those hairy moments, I kind of like stashed that data to remind myself down the road when I question, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I completely screwing up? Am I a total fake? Am I even ready for this? To look at the data and say, oh, this is just my imposter syndrome acting up. It's probably okay. But just to kind of follow up and echo your point on, making it your friend and part of your success, I think my advice to data scientists is that to be a good data scientist, you have to be a little bit paranoid. And this makes you do good work and question your assumptions and, check your tests, make sure you're not leaking data, all of that. And it actually helps you in the long run. The number one thing I want people to know is that do not let imposter syndrome keep you from trying to go after the things you want to go after, because that's the only time imposter syndrome wins and you lose, right? So just kick it in the face and keep going, and one day you'll discover, oh, okay, I have enough data to make reasonable judgments on my capabilities, and I can work with my imposter syndrome as a friend. So there is a very important and very good question from the audience, and this is about the topic of diversity and inclusion. Brandy is asking, she would like to know, as a non-traditional learner trying to break into the field of AI and ML, as a white lady, what could she do to help create a more equitable field? And I want to kind of like take that question and change it a little bit. First of all, thank you so much, Brandy, for being intentional and conscious and being aware of your own biases. We all start with ourselves, and that's already a really good first step. But I'm curious to hear you talk about Huiming. So what are some of the measures that you wish the industry would do more of? What are some of the measures for diversity and inclusion in terms of ML, AI, data science that has worked well for the Home Depot and your team? And, what advice do you have for people maybe like from traditional, non-traditional backgrounds getting into the field to be conscious of their own biases?
Yeah, it's a very important topic, especially for this forum, right? It is, as you can imagine, I think it's top of mind in many people's thinking. So I think within Home Depot, wherever I worked with, I've seen great intention, right? And this level of effort, it takes, the number one thing is we have to be intentional for this. There are for anything you wanted to do, there's always the first question is why? Why do you want to do this? Is it for just
Quotas?
right? And I think that less so, that is very true. But for actually driving, this is a business need too, I would say. Right? Yeah, this is going to be the most important thing. If you look at it from a machine learning perspective, let's take a look at this. We all know the importance of stratification. Right? You don't want to build a data set for the famous machine learning example, the image recognition that the best for white male, right? Because the data set is actually biased, right? So how do we really create good ideas and really have those benefits of the intelligence from all people to really contribute to your project, to your organization, to the health of long-term projects and the company? This is very important for the success of the company, not only for the equal, whatever the equalness that we need to make, right? Inclusiveness we need to have, whatever the group that is less represented. And I think for each business functions, marketing has a different kind of bias, or unbalance comparing to technical areas or comparing to data science areas. We do wanted to make it intentional and stratify basically the group that we're reaching out to. And then ultimately you will see the impact. I would say one thing that I wish this industry overall and the company-wise can do better is always make it transparent in terms of where we are, right? So the number that you see, what is the percentage of women in the team? What is the percentage of the different ethnic groups? Whether it's, there are many subgroups. Like, how do you really understand the current status and the future and the best industry and where we're moving towards? I can share a little bit of data points from Home Depot perspective I'm super proud of. And in fact, I was actually, I don't expect these numbers to be equal, but 50% of our 2019 hire is actually ethnically diverse. If you look at 50%, that's
awesome.
half, right? 1/3 of 2019 hire are women, and I was really excited about this. And our team speaks multiple languages, and I was looking at some statistics across the company. 30 plus languages spoken. Just looking at from a language perspective, there are a lot of things that I think company can do to move these needles better, and we're all in it. So I think from individual and corporate wise, we can all do better to improve and move the needles towards the right direction.
Yeah, and just to echo your points, I think for the ML professional in the crowd, diversity leads to better generalization, right? And we all want our algorithms to generalize well for the real world. And I think from my perspective, like the danger of lack of diversity and inclusion in AI is particularly important because, like as researchers, even with the best intentions, we cannot possibly understand how these algorithms affect the communities that we don't have a background or history in, right? For example, if I'm working an algorithm, I can understand how it affects, people with similar backgrounds, but I would not be able to know how this affects, like a lady in Africa or I don't know, someone who like works in India, for example, right? So I think some of the things that we do as open source is kind of serving as this function to recycle talent and really like make it an equalizer, because as long as you're willing to and you have the motivation, you can contribute to a repo, what will help you learn, will help you develop ML skills, and your work is documented. And you can then take that, documented work to show other people, hey, despite biases or what you may assume about me, this is what I'm capable of, and are you willing to, give me a shot, right? And I think, there has been multiple cases in my personal life where people who were really having a hard time struggling ended up going from, working on a ship as a, single mother to now working as a data scientist. And I know this is truly possible. And to kind of give some data or advice for from the open source side to people in companies trying to hire for talent, many of you have said that, every time I talk to you, you're having a hard time with like talent, right? And what I'm seeing in open source is actually that talent exists everywhere, and you may not be looking in the right places. So just cast a wider net, give people more of a shot, and maybe consider like testing their competencies in slightly different ways. So, for example, the way I test if people should be joining my research team is actually giving them a small project, and doesn't matter how simple it is, going from point A to point B and seeing how much they're able to grow and learn in that process. And are they able to perform reliably and take feedback, right? I don't look for PhDs. I don't look for machine learning background. And I found that to be a very reliable indicator of how people perform in real life. So with that said, I think we're out of time. Very happy to, continue chatting with you folks, in this event chat. And also very happy to chat with you if you add me on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Thank you for having me, Maddie. It was great to talk some of these important topics with everyone. I thoroughly appreciate the time, and hope we all will get together, or really together soon. In whatever.
Yeah, we love that. Yes, thank you so much, Huiming. Always very insightful to chat with you, and yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, everyone have a great